Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most unsettling truths about narcissistic behavior. What really happens when the narcissist's new supply disappears for good? Not temporarily, not out of reach, not playing hard to get, but truly permanently gone. This is the moment their illusion of control collapses, and the mask they've worn so confidently begins to crack. If you've been discarded, replaced, or ignored because they found someone new, you might think they move on effortlessly. They want you to believe the new supply is better, more exciting, more fulfilling. But what happens when that replacement is gone forever? When the narcissist can't go back, can't reconnect, can't pull them back into orbit? This is where the story turns dark and revealing. A narcissist's entire emotional world is built on access to admiration, attention, validation. When the new supply vanishes, even if the narcissist pretends not to care, the loss hits them harder than they will ever admit. They hide their panic behind a calm smile, but inside, the fear of losing control eats into them like acid. This is a moment filled with silent desperation. They don't show it publicly, of course. They may still post confident pictures, maintain their charming persona, or even appear indifferent. But behind closed doors, an emotional earthquake is beginning. Because a narcissist isn't afraid of losing love. They're afraid of losing supply. You see, the new supply isn't just a partner. It's a mirror. A source of emotional fuel. A constant reminder that the narcissist is still desirable, powerful, in control. When that mirror shatters, when the supply disappears permanently, they are forced to look at their true reflection. And that reflection terrifies them. Their first reaction is denial. They tell themselves the new supply will come back. They convince themselves the person is just confused, emotional, or going through a phase. They rewrite the story in their mind. They'll miss me. They always do. This denial keeps their ego from collapsing temporarily. But denial doesn't last long. Soon, cracks begin forming in the mask. The narcissist starts revisiting old messages, replaying conversations, obsessively checking social media. They scan for signs that the new supply might return. They look for anything that suggests the door isn't fully closed. But deep down, they sense the truth. The emotional hook in this story is simple yet haunting. Narcissists are terrified of emptiness. They spend their lives trying to fill it with people, drama, excitement, and validation. When the supply disappears, the emptiness grows louder, and for the first time in a long time, they can't silence it. This video will expose the psychological unraveling that happens inside a narcissist when the new supply disappears for good. It's not the triumphant victory they imagined. It's a slow, silent implosion, one they fight desperately to hide, but the symptoms always reveal the truth. By the end of this video, you'll understand the secret behaviors they never want you to see. The panic, the obsession, the rage, and the collapse. And most importantly, you'll learn why their downfall has nothing to do with love and everything to do with losing control. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Psychological Breakdown. To understand what happens next, we must dig into the psychology of narcissistic supply. A narcissist survives on emotional energy extracted from others. Admiration, attention, desire, fear, even anger. When the new supply disappears, the narcissist doesn't just lose a person, they lose access to this emotional fuel, and the deprivation cuts deeply. Without supply, the narcissist enters withdrawal. Not emotionally, but psychologically. It's similar to an addict being deprived of their substance. They feel restless, agitated, and irritable. Their mind becomes chaotic. Their sense of self starts to crumble because their identity depends on how others respond to them. Their greatest fear is exposed. They are not in control. Every narcissist lives with a hidden terror that people will stop believing in their illusion. The disappearance of new supply brings this fear to life. They begin questioning themselves, not out of self-awareness but out of desperation. Why didn't they stay? What did I do wrong? Next comes the blaming phase. The narcissist rewrites the story to protect their ego. The new supply becomes selfish, ungrateful, unstable. They villainize them to avoid taking responsibility. In their mind, they did nothing wrong, they were simply misunderstood. This psychological rewriting is a defense mechanism. But the truth creeps in during quiet moments. And when it does, the narcissist feels shame, not the healthy kind that leads to growth, but a toxic shame that fuels their entitlement. They begin to resent the new supply for leaving, because deep inside they believe they should never be abandoned. This resentment grows into obsession. They replay every interaction. They analyze every word. They stalk silently, observing from afar, gathering information to regain control. The narcissist is not looking for closure. They're looking for a weakness to exploit, even if the supply is gone permanently. But the most dangerous psychological shift happens next. The narcissist starts to panic about their image. Without the new supply confirming their desirability, they feel exposed. Their self-esteem plummets, and they become hyper-aware of any sign that their status is slipping. They fear being seen as rejected. This fear pushes them into frantic emotional strategies. They may attempt to rapidly replace the supply with someone new, not out of genuine interest, but to repair the damaged ego. They need proof fast that they still have power, and so begins the cycle of hunting for their next emotional source. But even as they search, a hollow feeling follows them. The old supply is gone, and the new one hasn't arrived yet. This period between sources is where the narcissist's mind becomes the darkest. This is when the rage begins to build silently inside them. And that rage has one source. The narcissist cannot accept that someone truly left them. They can't accept finality. They can't accept losing control. The disappearance of supply forces them to confront what they have spent a lifetime avoiding. And that confrontation is the beginning of their emotional unraveling. Chapter 2. The Turning Point. The turning point begins when the narcissist finally accepts that the new supply is truly gone. Not blocked temporarily, not emotionally distant, not confused, gone. This realization hits with the force of a psychological collapse. Their confidence begins to wobble, and their behavior shifts dramatically. The first shift is desperation disguised as calm. They pretend they're unaffected, but their actions betray them. They linger online longer. They post attention-seeking content. They brag excessively. They talk about how happy they are. It's all performance, a last attempt to lure the supply back indirectly. When these efforts fail, their mood darkens. The narcissist becomes irritable, reactive, and unstable. They lash out over minor issues. They become critical of others. Their internal world is trembling, and they project that turmoil onto anyone nearby. But inside, they're terrified. Then comes the reach-out phase. They may send messages like, "I hope you're okay," or "I've been thinking about you." These attempts aren't emotional. They're strategic. The narcissist is testing the door, checking for cracks. But when they get no response, their panic deepens. This is the moment where their anger begins to rise. They feel insulted by the silence. They feel disrespected by the lack of reaction. Their entitlement says they deserve attention, even from someone who's gone forever. The turning point intensifies when the narcissist realizes they don't have the emotional leverage they once relied on. Now their behavior becomes unpredictable. They may suddenly appear in places they know you frequent, comment on old posts, or attempt to create jealousy through new connections. Everything is an attempt to regain psychological presence in your life. Without it, they feel erased. When those attempts fail, their thinking becomes chaotic. They begin questioning why their strategies aren't working. They may blame themselves briefly, then quickly redirect the blame onto you or the new supply. This blame shifting helps them avoid the truth that they cannot process rejection. The deeper truth settles in. They are no longer in control. And this loss of control triggers their inner collapse. The narcissist, who once seemed unshakable, now feels fragile. The fantasy they built around themselves starts to crumble, piece by piece. The turning point ends with the narcissist standing in the ruins of their strategy. They realize they cannot manipulate someone who truly left, and this realization brings them face to face with emotions they cannot handle: emptiness, shame, and vulnerability. This is where the story shifts from manipulation to meltdown. Because once the narcissist accepts that the new supply is gone, their internal world unravels quickly. What comes next is the collapse. A collapse they can't hide behind charm or confidence. Chapter 3. The Collapse and Consequences. The collapse begins silently. The narcissist tries to maintain their usual routine, but their behavior becomes erratic. They're distracted, irritable, and constantly seeking stimulation to drown out the emptiness. Inside, they feel like they're losing themselves without someone reflecting admiration back to them. They become emotionally chaotic. Their confidence fades. Their charm weakens. Their usual manipulation tactics lose effectiveness. People around them sense the shift. They seem drained, unstable, and reactive. This is the hidden consequence of losing supply. Their inner world becomes a battlefield. Social isolation often follows. The narcissist pulls away from friends, or their friends pull away from them. Their behavior becomes exhausting. They rant about being misunderstood, betrayed, or mistreated. But these are projections. They cannot admit the truth that they are the source of their own loneliness. Financial, social, and emotional consequences begin to surface. They may sabotage opportunities, cling to unhealthy habits, or make reckless choices. The loss of supply destabilizes their thinking, and without emotional fuel, their destructive tendencies surface more visibly. The narcissist may attempt to revive old connections, exes, old friends, distant acquaintances, anyone who can fill the void temporarily. This isn't reconciliation, it's survival. They're searching for someone who will remind them of their importance, even if only for a moment. But these attempts often backfire. People they once discarded now see them clearly. The narcissist's desperation becomes obvious. Their attempts to reconnect feel hollow, manipulative, or insincere. And once again, the narcissist experiences rejection, fueling even more rage and shame. The internal consequences deepen. Sleepless nights, obsessive thoughts, panic, self-doubt. The narcissist, who claimed to be invulnerable, now feels emotionally exposed. They cycle between anger and despair, unable to regulate their emotions without external validation. This emotional collapse often leads to self-blame, but only for moments. They may briefly acknowledge their mistakes, but they quickly retreat into denial. Accountability feels too painful, so they shift the blame onto everyone else. They didn't appreciate me. They took me for granted. These narratives protect their ego, but deep down, they know something is broken. They feel the emptiness growing, the rage consuming them, the fantasy crumbling, and for the first time, they confront their greatest fear, being emotionally irrelevant. Without supply, they feel invisible. This is the consequence they cannot escape. It isn't punishment from the outside world, it's the natural result of their own behavior. The narcissist is left alone, staring into the void they spent their life trying to outrun, and that emptiness becomes their final, unavoidable companion. Chapter 4: Final Truth and Healing. Eventually, the narcissist reaches a place of emotional exhaustion. They can't chase new supply anymore. Their strategies don't work. Their charm no longer draws people in. This is where the truth settles. The new supply is gone forever, and no amount of manipulation will bring them back. The narcissist feels a quiet panic in this phase. They're forced to confront their inner emptiness, the emptiness they've been avoiding for years. Without external validation, they have nothing to anchor their identity, and this absence forces them into a stillness they cannot endure. But here's the part they never expect. While they spiral into confusion, the person they once discarded begins to thrive. You heal, you regain clarity, you rebuild your self-worth. And in contrast to your growth, the narcissist sees their decline even more clearly. This realization hits them harder than any breakup. They don't just lose supply, they lose the narrative. The person they believed they controlled now stands stronger, calmer, and wiser. This reversal of power is something the narcissist never saw coming. Healing for you begins when you understand this truth. The narcissist doesn't come back because they love you. They come back because they've lost supply. Their panic is not about connection, it's about control. And when you no longer fuel their ego, they lose the game. Your freedom begins in the moment you recognize their patterns. When you stop responding to their manipulation, when you no longer crave their validation, when you realize that their actions are rooted in wounds you are not responsible for healing. The true closure comes when you understand that their collapse is not your concern. It's not your responsibility to fix them, soothe them, or save them. Their pain is the consequence of a lifetime of avoidance. Avoidance of accountability, authenticity, and genuine connection. You heal by choosing peace over chaos, boundaries over guilt, and self-worth over emotional survival. You heal by recognizing that someone's inability to love is not a reflection of your value. You heal by stepping into a life where you no longer shrink yourself to fit their emptiness. And here is the final truth. Narcissists don't destroy the people who leave. They destroy themselves when they lose control. Their collapse is the result of the emotional debts they never paid, the connections they never honored, and the hearts they never valued. So as we close this video, remember this. Their ending is not your ending. Their emptiness is not your destiny. Your silence is your power. Your distance is your healing. And your peace is the final chapter they never expected. If this message brought you clarity, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You deserve freedom. You always have.